Toronto City Council has declared homelessness an emergency. The council voted to open warming centres when the temperature falls to -5 degrees or colder. This move comes as the city faces a housing crisis and soaring cost of living. In the first quarter of 2023, the average sale price of a single detached home was more than $1.2 million, and semi-detached homes went for just under $1 million. Toronto councillors are hoping their latest resolution will ease the crisis. Property owners looking to build a multiplex have to go through a rigorous approval process to change the city's official plan or zoning bylaws. Now, it will be as easy as applying for a building permit. My next guest is one of the 17 councillors who voted in favour of legalizing 2, 3 and even 4-unit multiplexes. Jamal Myers is a Toronto councillor representing Scarborough North. Councillor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So when you look at this change, what kind of a dent do you expect this to put in the Toronto housing crisis?
You know, at first we think it's just really about making sure that we get the policy right and that we are setting ourselves out to, get us out of the housing crisis that we find ourselves in. Many people think that, because we have about 75% of our land exclusively zoned for single-family housing, colloquially known as the Yellow Belt, that this is a major driver of the housing crisis in Toronto, whereas we only allow development in about 5% of the developable land in Toronto, the residential land, which is downtown and certain parts like Yonge and Eglinton. So we think this is a step in the right direction, but obviously we know we need to go further.
Well, Councillor, if you were building a housing supply from scratch, right? I mean, this would allow you to build that kind of diverse housing inventory, but this is going to require an existing inventory coming to market and then being refit, which kind of suggests that the impact of this may take some time. Is that a fair assessment of how this would work?
That's a fair assessment. The impact will take some time. I took things a bit further, whereas I'm allowing up to 6 units. I'm actually studying the option of allowing up to 6 units in my ward. And that's important because in order to get CMHC financing, which is so critical for a lot of these affordable housing projects, you need 5 units. The regulations that we passed only allow 4. So we're just taking things in a further direction to make sure that we're getting the affordable housing that we all desperately know that we need.
Right, so I've never lived in Toronto, but I have read a lot of stories about neighborhoods getting really upset whenever developers try to change the footprint of the neighborhood, build daycares, multi-unit houses. Are you worried about any kind of NIMBYism and backlash against the idea of turning single-unit lots into 3, 4, and maybe 6 if you get your way in Scarborough North?
Well, when I went to voters and residents and I talked to them at the door, what I really said to them was, wouldn't it be nice if your kids could grow up in the neighborhoods that they lived in? Wouldn't it be nice if they could live there? Wouldn't it be nice if your grandkids lived down the street instead of, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away? And people were like, yeah, that would be nice. People know that the neighborhoods need to change. Scarborough North is a great community, and despite this, every single census shows that our population is dropping. A big reason it's dropping is that all of the land, so much of the residential land is zoned exclusively for single-family homes, which oftentimes cost more than $1 million. So these houses, these neighborhoods were originally built for working class families, and we really need to get back to that. Allowing our neighborhoods to be welcoming to families of all diversities, of all income types, and to make sure that we get our population growing again, get our population up again. And people understand that, they get that.
I wonder though, if a building lot right now you're only allowed to have 1 unit on it, that puts a bit of an, well, maybe not in Toronto, but in theory it will put a ceiling on its value. If you can suddenly put 4 units there, could that not drive up the cost of that lot? I mean, that's something developers might look for. They can make 4 sales on a single piece of property.
That was something that we were worried about, but our concerns were addressed because we're doing this across the city. So if you were doing this in a certain area where we were only allowing this, say, in the downtown or the old city of Toronto, yes, that would definitely drive up the cost. And we've seen that with the condo boom. Most of the condos are only allowed downtown, which is why they're so expensive. But because we're doing this across the city, we're hopeful that that threat of inadvertently driving up the cost of a house won't come to pass.
Right, so you see this as part of a policy mix as a solution to this, and acknowledge it will take some time, but you sit on the Planning and Housing Committee. What more should be done, and what do you need to see from the provincial and federal governments, because they obviously have to play a role on this one?
So what we definitely need from the provincial government is the right to develop policies where we can force developers to either build or lose the land that they hold, use it or lose it. Right now, Toronto has over 200,000 units of approved housing that's sitting there. And we can't do anything to force these developers to actually build on that land. So we need the power to allow them to force them to either build the land or to return it to the city so that we can get other builders to build the housing that we desperately need. And we also need more affordable housing, obviously money for supportive housing. We need money to allow for CMHC financing. So there's lots of different things that we're looking for in the federal and provincial governments. And we're also looking to allow some of the reverses in Bill 23. There were some good things, the new provincial policy, but they really took away the city's ability to charge development charges. And those charges are critical for infrastructure that we all depend on: roads, sewers, parks, community recreations. So we really need to get back to being a partner with the city, the province, and the federal government, rather than sort of the city sort of taking this on its own.
You mentioned 200,000 approved homes that aren't being developed. I mean, with the price of Toronto real estate, that seems like you're sitting on a gold mine. Why aren't developers building houses on these approved parcels?
Some of it's economics. The economics have changed since the approvals might have gone in. Sometimes they're just waiting. They're waiting for the price and the value to keep going so that they can make even more money. But whatever the reason, it's just not acceptable just to have so many units just lying there. And, we have to get this goal of building over 285,000 units in 10 years. We already have 200,000 units approved, but we don't have the power to force the developers to actually build on the land.
Have you got a projection on this, going back to where this conversation started, the switch from 1-unit homes to up to 4? Have you got a data set or an idea of how much of that gap can come from this shift in policy?
We don't have that yet, but we have actually asked in the approval for this recommendation that we get data on the first 200 units that are approved so that we know if these units are affordable or not, and that will sort of help us refine the policy going forward.
Okay. Councillor Jamal Myers, it was nice to meet you. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you so much, David.